States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dr. Rendell, before we get started with you, I wanted to say welcome to Mary Jo for attending our meeting with us. We appreciate you and look forward to all the great things that we see you do behind the scenes and doing them with us inside the meetings. Thank you for being here. Dr. Rendell, can you address the board with the items on the agenda for today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On today's agenda, we have the following topics. First will be a presentation about the South Brevard area schools capacities, then a presentation from Student Services on various data, and then a short discussion on our legislative platform for the 25 legislative session. So first is a presentation about the South area schools capacity. I'm going to turn that over to Sue Han.
Good afternoon, everyone. This will be a pretty short presentation, but there's a lot of depth to it that we've been working on behind the scenes. But I think everyone sort of intuitively knows that in the South Brevard area, specifically in Palm Bay, there's quite a lot of growth happening. And we've been trying to figure out, okay, what is our strategy for trying to keep up with the growth in Palm Bay and plan for the growth? But basically, what's happening in Southeast Palm Bay and to some extent, northwest Palm Bay, kind of adjacent over that, over by Heritage High School is growing along the parkway. So the size and scope of the development activity in Palm Bay is really kind of analogous to what has happened in Viera over the years. So if you think about, Viera starting as basically a field with nothing on it, and it's grown over the years to be what you see today, that same type of development activity is what's planned in the Palm Bay area. And this map is a little startling. It kind of shows you south and east of Palm Bay along the vicinity of where the new interchange is with the St. John's Heritage Parkway, all of the proposed development activity. And similar to the Viera's development program, these are all in various stages of development. So there's some things that are building, there are some things that are planned, there's some things that are kind of thoughts about what might go there. So it's not all there right now, but you can see that something's coming and that we need to be prepared both in the short term to respond to growth as well as in the long term. You also notice in Palm Bay, they have something pretty unique in all of this area. Those are quarter-acre platted lots. There's 70,000 of them. All of this. So it all looks like it's developed. Those are quarter-acre lots. Some of them have houses on them, some of them don't. They've been developing at a pretty good pace, but they are not under any type of development agreement. This was property that was platted back in the 50s and 60s under general development, similar to Port St. John. And it doesn't have any sort of development controls that you might see today. So those develop as folks get a building permit and put a home. The area in the west out here, they are quarter-acre platted lots. There's our roads, but there's no utilities out there, so there's no water, sewer, power, any of that stuff. So that's what's referred to as the compound if you read about it. But my understanding is that if you really want a building permit out there, you can go get one. You just don't have, you have a road, but no water, no power, no nothing. But that is several thousand lots. So again, not under a development agreement, certainly has the potential to develop. The city has done some kind of master planning out that way and certainly would like to do something with that involves some commercial and economic development activity versus just single family residential lots. But you can see there's quite a bit of potential. Similarly to the east, you have Grant, Valcaria, Malabar. Those are larger lots, but again, platted lots, not under any type of development agreement. So a lot of potential for activity in the south. So this slide just shows you the historical student membership from 2021 up through 24, and then the last 3 points are November, December, and January of this year. So we saw some growth, and then we've kind of leveled off, so to speak, but even, an addition of 20 students means another classroom space. So we've got to really kind of think about how we're going to accommodate the projected growth in this area. And then Karen's done some projection based on development trends and demographic trends, and you can see that we're going to have some stress in South Brevard. So we want to try to both respond to the current activity as well as get prepared for the future. So where we are today is we're going to be recommending some action right now that addresses West Side, Sunrise, and Bayside. We're monitoring Jupiter and Riviera. Both of those are also growing, but they're in a little different situation in that there's capacity at schools near them, and Riviera in particular is also kind of at the south end of the West Melbourne growth area, so that interacts with the West Melbourne charter market as well. So we don't think those are as high a priority as where we are with West Side, Sunrise, and Bayside. We also believe that we will need additional elementary schools, additional high school, additional middle school capacity in this area. But the other piece is that the charter market is growing too. So I think our next slide shows some where the charters are located now, but there are also plans for additional charter capacity. And then I just want to make sure everybody's clear that Viera is still growing too. So we've done a big investment in the Viera area over the last several years with the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school classroom addition. And that is in the same educational impact fee district as West Melbourne and Palm Bay that are also growing. So we've done the classroom addition at West Melbourne. We'll be doing our ribbon cutting tomorrow. And then anticipate the next major investment chunk is going to be in the South Brevard area, more or less serving Palm Bay. So things that we think about as we're making these decisions, that our school buildings are fixed. So where we put them is where they stay. And so the decision about where we put schools and when is kind of important because we're spending a lot of money in one spot. And that one spot is going to be the spot for quite some time. Some of you may remember we had a lengthy discussion about this relative to the middle school location for Viera, that, is that the right location? Because we're only going to build one over the next 10 or so years. So is it in the right spot? As you've seen, development patterns change, population shifts, and what happens in the educational marketplace really matters, as well as even just the way that education is delivered. So we're trying to spend the right amount of money in the right places at the right time, but it really is a challenge to kind of make sure that all of those factors are under consideration. This is just a map that shows the charter schools as they are today. Karen and Dr. Meyer are on top of where charters have additional capacity planned, and that changes all the time too. And if you look at historically in our student accommodation plan, and Karen and Dr. Meyer had done some analysis of this, the charters tend to expectedly follow the growth. So you see charters in the Viera area, charters in West Melbourne, charters in Palm Bay. The charter market is following the same growth that we're working on as well. So we're trying to think about, okay, what can we build? What is our financial capacity to build? Because we can't make too many of these decisions. We don't have the financial capacity to do that. So what's the best place to put the resources that we have? So what we're thinking about down in South Brevard is, first of all, we had talked to you all about doing a middle school at the corner of San Filippo and DeGroot. And we got into that project, had a consultant look at it, and the bottom line is that that site has got some challenges with it. There's no utilities to it, no water and sewer. At the time we started down this path, we had expected the city to be bringing water and sewer to the site. That process was slowed. There's wetlands on the site. It's just, by the time we got to like, okay, what's it going to cost to actually be able to build here? It was millions of dollars before we ever turned the first bit of dirt for the school. So we've got that project on hold, because I think we'll go there someday, just not right now. But in the short term, we wanted to add capacity at Sunrise, Westside, and Bayside, and that's really what I want to talk about today. We're also doing some things to plan for the future. Karen's very engaged with the development community as well as with the city and the county to try to monitor development activity, looking at trying to negotiate development agreements that would bring us or a charter a site. And there's some ways to do that as part of the development approval process with the city of Palm Bay. So we're actively engaged in that for kind of the long-term piece. Also, we're working with WXY. They'll be coming back with recommendations for kind of the mid to long-term facility plan, and I think some of this will be incorporated into that work as well. And then we always have boundary changes if we choose to go in that direction. And you'll notice those are last on my list of options. So here's where we want to go. So Westside Elementary, we want to do a classroom building addition. And this is going to be in the 12-ish classroom range. We, again, want to provide the right amount of capacity, don't want to get too big because then we start to overrun things like the cafeteria and parking, and we start having those problems. But we want to expedite this one because this is where we really are seeing a lot of growth, and we're concerned about being able to accommodate the students that we know are coming. So there's portables on site now, and we're going to move the 4 portables that are at Bayside now because they're in the way of the classroom addition at Bayside. We want to move those over to the Westside campus and then do the classroom addition project. Our goal is to have the portables moved by this summer and then open the new classroom addition in August of 2026. So that'll make the school a size of about 1,300, and our estimated cost is somewhere between $6 to $7.5 million for that project. The next project is Bayside High. Again, we're going to be using a prototype design, potentially looking at like kind of what we did over at Vieira High School, only making it a 2-story building. Those portables that are there now will go over to Westside. This is going to be a big high school, about 3,000 students, and opening in August of 27, cost of $15 to $20 million. And then the last recommendation is something new. At Sunrise Elementary, we saw an opportunity to potentially develop a K-8 model. So they also need capacity. We do want to be able to provide a little bit more middle school capacity without actually building a brand new middle school at the San Filippo site at this time. And so what we're looking at doing is using the Vieira Middle School gym building as a prototype and bringing that down to the Sunrise campus. And then we're also going to do a classroom expansion. This is a design that we refer to as the pant leg, and there's like a half a pant leg done, and there's another opportunity to build the other mirror image. It's about a 6 to 8 classroom addition. So we would ultimately be removing the portables and doing those 2 additions in order to improve the elementary capacity as well as add 7 and 8. And our plan is to open that in August of 27 at a cost of $15 to $27 million. That'll require a little bit of rezoning, but I think it'll be relatively limited. So just to kind of show you what this would look like, we'll be bringing in the portables, doing the classroom addition as kind of a mirror image to what's already there on site. You will have on your agenda for February 11th the prototype design contract. So that is moving along rapidly. In order to get that open for August of 26, we basically have to start. So that's why I'm standing here today, is if we don't start, we will not make it. We would anticipate a continuing services construction manager, as the price is anticipated to be under the threshold. So that should be on your board agenda late February, early March for pre-construction and the guaranteed maximum price. This also leaves that site between Westside and Bayside vacant. So we, in working with Mr. Raymer and others, kind of looked at a bunch of different like permutations and combinations of what could go on that site, and looked at things like the Meadow Lane primary intermediate model. We looked at 6-9. Like there's a lot of different ways to think about what we can use that site in the middle for. But I don't think we're ready for that depth of conversation yet. So we kind of have to handle what's going on here now, and then I think we can do some more work about what's the appropriate investment on that middle piece of property. Bayside High School, this one's relatively straightforward. Anticipate bringing a design proposal to you as a prototype late February, early March. We'll do a design development phase, and then there'll be an RFQ for construction manager. And then finally, for planning at, oh, I'm sorry, did I miss a slide? No, where is it? There we go. Okay, so this one just shows you the relationship of the two sites, Bayside and Westside, and the option to put something in between. We also have a transportation project that we're trying to find a home for. So Mr. Wilson and I will be visiting the Westside bus compound, and that may creep into that area as well. We just haven't figured out how to fit everything that we need in that general area yet. And then here's the slide I was thinking I missed. This is the Sunrise Elementary campus, and we're not positive everything's gonna fit. So we have to fit a track, and we have to fit a building, and you can see the pant leg piece right here. And it doesn't have to be this prototype, like we can do something else here. This is just what we thought would be a pretty straightforward approach to the project. So once we have an architect on board, then we'll start to do some of the more detail planning phase to see if we can like actually fit everything we would like to fit here. We're going to be looking at questions like the core infrastructure. Do we need to do anything with cafeteria, parking, traffic, all of those things? And so this one is going to require a little bit more thinking and planning before we start building. But at least as a concept, we think it's a good one to explore. This works well as a K-8 experiment. Oops, let me see. Because the school is located kind of it's in the southeast corner of our district. And so when you think about what rezonings might happen and feeder chains and all of that, it's pretty minor. So it's not like it's in the middle of several schools and it's going to make a big mess by converting to a K-8. This one's pretty simple. And so it's a good way for us to try a K-8 in our district. It's also responsive to what the market is generating in terms of charters. Our competitors are building K-8s, and it meets the needs of our enrollment projections. So we thought this was a good place to give this a try, and think that this will be a successful model for us going forward, but it'll allow us to learn how things work when we try to transition from an elementary school to a K-8 school. And then this is just some data around what a K-8 would look like in terms of who's coming from where. Potentially, we would be bringing in about 166 students from Southwest and about 17 from Stone. That's the students that are within that boundary if we just use the Sunrise Elementary School boundary. But we don't have to use that boundary, so as part of the process, we'll be looking at what is the best boundary for the K-8 model in this area. So that's just one opportunity that's the easiest one from a, sitting in the drafting board point of view, but there's a lot of other considerations once we get into it. The funding is all South area educational impact fees. So right now we have about $19 million available. This is based on educational impact fees collected by Brevard County through December 30th. We've gone through the allocation process for those, so we should have those cash in hand by March. The total of these projects estimated to be about $47 million. We have enough cash available today to build the West Side project. We have enough cash available to do the design for Sunrise and Bayside, so we can get way far along before we are running out of cash. I've done a quick and dirty just cash flow projection, kind of like we did with the Vieira Middle School. Very similar. The cadence of educational impact fee revenue and the cadence of disbursement for construction kind of match. So we might need a letter of, well, we will need a letter of credit. We might need to use it at some point towards the later part of the construction period. But I'll know much more about that once we actually have construction pricing and we have a few more quarters of impact fee revenue. And this is all based on pretty conservative estimating, thinking about a $3 million a quarter educational impact fee revenue stream. We've been closer to 4 most quarters. But again, if development continues, we absolutely need to build these facilities. And if development doesn't continue, we maybe don't. So I think the rationale of using educational impact fees and depending upon those revenue streams makes sense for these classroom addition projects. So I think we're going to continue doing our planning work. So we have a lot of other things that we need to be working on while we're working towards these classroom addition projects. And this is kind of a menu of what will be coming your way over the next couple of months. So the first thing that you'll see is the prototype design contract for West Side, and then you'll start to see design contracts for Bayside and Sunrise. The portable move GMP will probably be here in the spring for you. And then you'll start to see pre-construction, and eventually we'll get to the construction contracting, but really need to work on the financing piece a little bit more. We'll need to make sure that the K-8 model is like everything we think is going to work from a conceptual planning point of view is actually going to work. So we've got a lot of work to do through the spring, but I think you'll be hearing from us and seeing board items at a regular cadence on all of these projects over the next several months. So I think that concludes my presentation, and if you all have some questions, I'd be happy to turn them over to Karen and Dave to answer.
So I think the most important person in conversation right now is Ms. Kim. Ms. Kim, do you have any questions you want to leave? And Mr. Thomas, but I think that some of these are specific to those areas.
Yes, this is my stomping grounds. Right, am I on? Okay. Thank you guys for doing this in such a timely fashion, because every time I drive down to these southernmost schools, we just added 5 more families last week and 20 kids last month, and I get asked this question a lot. What are you doing? What's the plan for the South? So thank you so much. So we talked about boundary changes for elementaries potentially, but I'm looking around at the schools that are near Southwest and Sunrise, and they don't really have a lot to give. We'd have to do some pretty significant sheltering. I mean, maybe Columbia, but there's not a lot of room to give. Right. Hardly anywhere in that south area. So I think the timeliness of this. I will tell you, I'm a little nervous about the ginormous elementary school. What is our just single building, not thinking about the meadow lanes because they're 2 separate. What is our largest elementary school currently?
I don't know off the top of my head. No.
Off the top.
It's probably West Side right now.
Quest.
Yeah.
Quest came down when we opened Vieira Elementary, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
Vieira Elementary.
Vieira.
Oh, wait. Creole has more capacity.
No, I'm just talking about
She wants to know
population.
what's
I'm talking about
our
student
largest
population.
enrollment right now. It's either West Side or
Yeah,
Sunrise.
membership. I mean,
I was looking at capacity.
we've gotten close, but this would be 1,300 in one building. That's a lot for West Side. But you guys have already looked into the cafeteria situation. Anyway, I'm just thinking through this. I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a challenge. Whatever we end up doing, I know it's in the future, but that idea of a primary intermediate option, that's what we had, the district had to do years ago for the Meadow Lane area, because the idea of one jumbo elementary school that's got 1,500 kids in it is almost unmanageable. So I'm glad we're taking a look at what we might do there. I think I think this is great. You know that I've not ever been shy about trying to limit our amount of debt, and so I'm just going to reiterate that. I like the line of credit that we used with Vieira Middle School, the idea that we only took out what we needed, and we've been able to pay that off. You know, if it's not completely paid off already, it's
We've not, we have not used the
never- we
line.
never used it.
Never used the line.
Even
We-
better.
We had to pay the kind of, use the line, have the line of credit fee, but we did not use the line of credit during
right. So the
construction.
timing of that was perfect, and I'm glad that we can do all of these options potentially without having to add to our debt bottom line, which I'm just like watching shrink every year that I've been on the board. So I'm in favor of us moving on, and I think it's very much needed, especially for this upcoming school year, so they can plan. And I know Miss Woodbury down at Westside doesn't like giving up any more classrooms, and it's, you know, she doesn't want to make her art and music teachers have to travel around the building. It's not really fair to them. They have great art and music programs at that school, they have for years. So giving them some more classroom space is, you know, she's finding every closet and putting place for each classroom. But I think this is great, and I don't necessarily have any further questions. I know it looks like everything, you know, Sunrise, K-8. I will say this, I very much appreciate that when we have this conversation that we're going to do this as a model and just see how it works. We will have one rather than let's just go out and make all these K-8s for our new growth. I like the idea of having this as a let's dip our toe into the water slowly and see if this works in our area. And if it does, then that's a model for the future. So I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I on? Just a couple of questions. First of all, thank you for all your work on that, and it's very comprehensive, and it doesn't sound like we have much of a choice. My questions are more about beyond this, and I'm just curious if south of Palm Bay to the county line and west of 95 in West Melbourne all the way out to the west county line, have you guys, are you aware of any land that's been purchased by the big production builders where they own the land, they haven't submitted a development agreement, but we know that it's kind of coming down the pike that there could be these huge developments?
Yes.
Is that yes to both areas?
Yes to it all. You'll see in the student accommodation plan that will come to you late March, Karen has all that mapped, and she monitors all that development activity. And so, yes, it's in both of those areas.
So this could be the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
Okay. I will end my questioning there. Thank you.
One of the things that Mr. Thomas might be able to take advantage of is your capacity planning workshops that you have with all of the city managers. If you want to attend that next time, Mr. Thomas, it's amazing how to the point that Mr. Lindemann and Ms. Black's team are about judging who's coming in and where they're going. That might help out to not only that, but introduce yourself and say hi to a lot of city managers.
I do have one last question. Are the production builders primarily, are they cooperative as far as sharing future plans?
I would say, relatively, and sometimes it's developer, like pre-production builder. It might be the developer that we're dealing with before it gets into the builder owns the property. But generally speaking, yes. We actually convened a meeting of all the big property owners, developers in the Palm Bay area, South Palm Bay area a few months ago, with kind of the intention of like, look, we don't need a school site from everybody, but we need a couple school sites from somebody. So it'd be nice if we all worked together. And the city attended and is working with us. So I think that's, for us, is kind of a model for collaboration of not one at a time, bringing everybody together that's got these big areas kind of under contract and trying to work through what does school planning look like in that area versus just in your development.
And do you see west of I-95 in the west, west of West Melbourne, out to the county line, growing as quick or as soon as future development in south of Palm Bay, or is it same time or delayed? Any ideas?
Yeah, Karen,
That seems like a forgotten area, but I know it's going to be growing quick.
It's not, because there's quite a bit of legacy development approvals kind of along that Western Parkway corridor. But Karen, you probably have a better handle on exactly what's going on out there.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The St. John's Heritage Parkway is expanding more towards Heritage High School, but there's a lot of development that's not coming in as fast as the south area around the interchange north of that. So there's quite a bit of land that's owned by pretty much one family that is not coming in yet. So that's a little bit further off than the south area.
And I know my limited knowledge I know the Platlands west of going out to the county line.
Yes.
That was, Melbourne annexed it several years ago, and I know that's been, I've heard in the queue of the family wanting to develop it, or it's becoming more of an interest to develop it.
Yes.
Yes. We're monitoring all of that.
Okay, I was just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, I have a couple of questions. So if you don't mind, if you can go back to slide number 3, just for clarification purposes, I want to ask a couple of things. So there's a couple different phrases that are used in here, and I just want to understand them completely. So when it says concept only,
Slide number 3.
Oh, on the map
The
of south
maps.
area.
the maps, yeah, it's the very beginning 3, I thought it was.
The big map,
The beginning.
the very
the big
big
map.
first
The red
map.
grids.
Oh, that one. Okay. Sorry.
That one.
Okay.
Almost got there.
So we
Okay.
look at this and we see final county approval, 2,300 units possible. So what does that mean exactly? Does that mean it's been approved and platted and it's ready to go and a builder can come in, or?
Karen, you want to?
That's one that I did have under concept only before, and I've recently put the county approval on there because they de-annexed from the city into the county.
Okay.
And when they did, they brought approval with them. So they have approval. I don't have the exact unit count, but it's somewhere around 2,300 units that can go on that property. Now, once they bring in stormwater management and they bring in roads, it'll probably be less than that when it actually gets platted. But my notes on there are pretty much, where it is in construction. So if it says concept only, they haven't formally submitted it. I'm watching it. I know that it's coming, or I know that it's possible, but it's in the future.
Okay, so there's not anything that's really right there in front of us right now, we just know this is possible.
Correct.
Okay, and then the other one that says a comp plan amendment, when we're looking at like the Sunterra mixed-use development there.
Right. So they've come in for preliminary review,
Okay,
not final plat yet.
not final plot yet, so there is a chance that the municipality could deny the comp plan amendment, correct, which would hinder the building of it, right, that could happen?
Possible.
Possibly, okay, all right. I know, these are all, we're trying to get to the future. It's very hard to do, right? We're predicting what's gonna happen in the future. One of the things that would help me, because this is so much information all at one time, is to see the capacity that we have at our schools that are all located in this proximity. So I know that we have a chart that tells us where we're at on capacity issues. If that was something that you could, I was trying to go back in our previous presentations, because you've given this to us before, I just couldn't put my hands on it to look and see what that looks like. And then as far as the K-8 model, I like the idea of the K-8 model. I'm curious what that does to the middle school that it's gonna pull from, right? Those students that are gonna come from there. Are we gonna create another capacity, like, okay, now we have an underutilized school, so what are we gonna do there? And is that gonna possibly cause another issue in the future that we're gonna have to look at? Moving the portables and the ages of the portables, do you have any idea what the ages are? Because sometimes those portables are very, very old.
So those 4 have recently been refurbished. So we agree. We're trying not to drag old decrepit portables around the district. So those 4 in particular are in pretty good shape.
They're in good shape, okay, all right, so I just didn't wanna drive
Yep.
the floor over there and say, hey, we have more capacity and now we're
Yeah.
falling to the floors of them, which I really wouldn't do that, but I'm just saying.
We're trying not to. I wanted to answer your question about Southwest. So Southwest is also predicted to grow in terms of enrollment pressure. So by potentially redistricting some of those students into the new middle school, that'll give them a little bit more room to accommodate all the stuff that's potentially, generating students around them. But we're not really sold on the line at this point. I think that has a little bit of flux to it where we can discuss different options relative to how we redraw the boundary.
Okay.
But we're sensitive to that question.
Okay, good deal. I'm obviously building the middle school with no debt. That was a huge win, I think, for Brevard County, for Vieira Middle, and I would like to see that same kind of philosophy go forward with any kind of construction we do, because we are still paying off debt that we've had for a whole lot of years. So Ms. Campbell, I agree with you wholeheartedly on the get out of debt, but obviously the capacity issue is one that we have to address, because we're going to have a problem. And quite frankly, this kind of, Palm Bay, it exists dramatically in Palm Bay, but it exists really all over Brevard County. If you drive up and down anywhere, you will see new subdivisions, new apartments, things that are going up all over the place, which quality problem to have. The Space Coast is a highly desirable place to live, but just, planning for the future. So if you don't mind, if you can send me that shows us what the capacities are. And does that map out, I think in that presentation it mapped out where the schools are too. So I'm not as familiar with the Palm Bay Melbourne area since I represent the north end as I probably should be. So I need to get down there and visit your schools down there, guys. So I think that's all that I have.
Yeah, the Section 10 maps.
All good. Just wanted to say thank you, Sue, when you sent that email for Sunrise K-8, all this overdue, just recently, I called her immediately and said thank you. It's something that this board's been moving towards over the last 8 years, and the K-8 models, just so everybody knows, the reason that the charter schools are putting them in is it's a highly sought after for achievement levels. You can see the comparative between the two in similar situations, and the K-8 scores higher in achievement, and that's one of the reasons the charters like it. Plus, there's that drop into 7th grade, which we see. It's a very good model, so thank you, thank you, thank you. It's also competitive towards charters. The capacity is an issue. I wanted to say, one of the things I've seen in some of the other school districts is they call them school within schools. So you have you'll have like K through 2 or 3, and then 3 through, you know what I mean? And they only work inside their schools. They have a dean that acts like a principal. We did that at Space Coast, where we had the middle school and the high school. They had their own dean out there. It was called Portable City at the time, but they had the middle school and the portables, and it actually it worked inside of itself. So there are ways that the capacity can be sliced up and represented, but you are 100% right over the cafeterias and stuff like that to make sure. And I think Sue's on top of that, but you're right about the capacity, but there are ways to get a hold of it, because there are parents that will choose a smaller school just because they want to get to one, but we don't have that option in many cases. So thank you, appreciate that. And then the West Side Bus Compound, when you're developing that, there's this really cool PE teacher that's there that's got this amazing workout facility that Dr. Rendell went down there and we ran with them. So when you're putting all that together, if you can be cognizant of his little designs that he has down there and make sure that we offer him some workout areas. If you take away from him, you have that whole field right there in San Luis next door. You could give him some running territory in there, but I got to look out for him because he's a really good guy, and we had fun there. I mean, he's got legitimately some stuff built there, which is pretty cool. All right, anybody else have any other questions on this one? Okay, Dr. Rendell.
And we're going to transition to the next presentation, which is from the Student Services Department.
Thank you, Ms.
Various
Sue.
data points.
Jean.
Definitely want to thank Sue and her team. So Student Services is going to give you some presentation on some discipline data, first semester of this current school year compared to first semester of last year. Not just student discipline, but also Title IX and also bullying and harassment. So we're going to take a couple minutes for them to get set up.
Mic check, mic check. I don't know if he's gonna come out and tell me. I mean, that's what I can hear it coming over the,
We're all good.
all right, thank you.
Ms. Dampier.
Good afternoon, board members and Superintendent Rendell.
I'm pleased to provide an overview of student services data update for semester 1. Today I have Mr. Armstrong and Mrs. Kassenschmidt here, and we will provide you a glimpse of how we've done thus far. As you know, data tells a story. And when we think about data, we're always looking at data to make decisions. And from a data perspective, we as a district and from us office, we look at data to tell us areas that we need to improve in and areas that we really have done well in. And so that's what we've utilized this data to make decisions as far as continuous support that we need to provide throughout the next semester. With that in mind, the overall agenda that we're going to provide, we're going to go over the student discipline structure, and then we'll take a look at actions taken to improve discipline. We did a lot of training in July and August to prepare and make sure all stakeholders were prepared for the opening of schools. And then we'll provide an overview of the discipline data, which will include bullying and Title IX. And then we really wanted a snapshot of how we're doing as far as professional development and trainings and resources. So we also did an administrator, bus driver survey, and then we asked our partners, BFT, to provide a survey to their members to get a snapshot of how well the school principals and the teachers are doing in their schools. So we're going to utilize that data to give to the principals so they can, really work with their teachers in the school, as well as next steps, because we've taken a look at this data to make sure that where do we go from here. And so with that, this is our student discipline BPS structure, which starts out, of course, with student discipline. Then we move to the school principal, who's ultimately responsible for discipline within the school building. They own the data. With that, they're responsible for implementing the policies, procedures of the Code of Student Conduct, as well as discipline procedures within our district. With that, we have 2 offices that work to make sure that we're supporting the schools, the Office of Student Services. Our responsibility is to maintain policies, processes, and procedures to make sure that we train our stakeholders. Oversight of compliance to make sure that when we're processing referrals, we're processing them in a timely manner. Trainings and support, and making sure that we have a new Code of Student Conduct every year. The Office of School Leadership, if there's a need for this office to intervene due to the implementation of inconsistent processes, procedures, et cetera, the principal supervisors will intervene. This office also oversees the ALCs and any of our alternative sites, as well as facilitates our expulsion hearings. So it really is a collaborative effort to make sure that discipline is working effectively in our school. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Armstrong and then Mrs. Kassenschmidt.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So looking at here, we kind of looked at and said actions to improve student outcomes. So on the left there, you see in July and August, the set of trainings that we have done for various stakeholders there, including for our administrators, staff, and students. We included that with our bullying, harassment, Code of Student Conduct, attendance, threat management, as well as Title IX. Additional trainings that were also done in this time frame were for our bus drivers and transportation. So we had a bus driver training done that is actually at O'Galley, and then we had our annual assessor training as well that was done for them and for all staff members. Actions taken here, monthly things that we do all the time are administrators trainings. So those are usually done monthly. We meet at the LTMs with our principals, as well as we have separate meetings for our 12-month and our 10-month assistant principals who oversee discipline on a day-to-day basis. Transportation problem-solving meetings, we monthly meet with the transportation supervisors to problem solve and kind of see maybe some trends that are happening and try to get in front of it instead of being reactive, proactive in our approach. We collaboratively have meetings with our partners in BFT monthly, where again, we also work collaboratively trying to problem solve any issues or concerns that may arise. And then we also are with our MTS problem solving training. So we have a group that is consistently working with staff members in providing training in various components of MTSS. There are also district and collaborative problem solving school visits that we do on a monthly basis where we're going out to schools and meeting with their administrative staff. We've had a de-escalation training for our bus drivers in the beginning of the school year, as well as FBA and BIP trainings by our MTSS staff. And as well as currently, we're in our final phase of our district discipline work group sessions. We started back in October, and we will be having our final fourth session here on February 13th.
Justin, can I just ask you real fast, acronyms, you know I love these things. What does FBA stand for? That's not what I'm familiar with.
Functional behavior assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Put me on the spot. All right, so on to the data. So if you look here, we've actually seen some decrease in our overall total referral count, approximately reducing by 4% from this time last year, which is approximately just under that 2,000 referral mark at 1948 from semester 1 of last year to semester 2 of here. Also with that, the number of students receiving ODRs, which is an acronym for Office Discipline Referrals, has also reduced roughly from 15,274 to 14,196, which is a reduction of 7% overall. So we have been seeing a reduction in both of those categories. Here we have our top 5 student behaviors as well as our top 5 corrective strategies. So to give you a layout of this, you have your 23-24 data on your left-hand side for semester 1, and that is in a mirror image of it on the right side for 24-25. The arrows on the side show you where we've seen decreases in what those top 5. So a highlight that we'd like to show is out of the 5 student behaviors, we have seen a decrease in 3 of them, particularly looking at things like willful disobedience. We've seen a dramatic decrease in that. If you remember last year, we did implement more of a tiered scale of willful disobedience, so that way it's just not a catch-all. So now it's being used more appropriately across the board. And on the bottom here, you have your top 5 corrective strategies. And then there you can see we've had a decrease in 2 out of the 5 suspensions in conference with students. So in there, again, that kind of goes back to the other slide we talked about. There's been a decrease overall in referrals, so we'd like to think that usually goes with a decrease in suspensions as well. And then we've also seen, as far as hate-related offenses, we've had currently 8 for this semester, and we are constantly monitoring that as well.
I have to jump in here really quick because it's not highlighted because it got knocked off the list, but last year our in-school suspension was 4897, and it's not going to show that it's gone down because it's completely kicked off the top 5. So
Correct.
I think that's a really good sign to show too, that because it had to be lower than 2,800.
It is. The actual number, Ms. Campbell, was 2,072.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And this is just a breakout of what you've seen on the other slide here. It's just done by race. So you have your top 5 student behaviors on the top, broken out by race and total population of that demographic. And then on the bottom, you have the same thing on the other slide where it's a breakout of the top 5 corrective strategies by race. That chart in the top right-hand corner is giving you the total referrals by race there. So we try to make it color coordinated so it would be easily identifiable when looking at this. But this is actually just a breakout of the previous data, just in more robust fashion. So talking about suspensions, on the chart on the left here, you have the total day counts of in-school suspension and out-of-school suspensions. That's not to be confused with actual use of an out-of-school suspension code. These are the actual amount of days. So if you look, ISS has decreased like we had seen before. So the number of days utilized went from 4803 to 3506, which is approximately a 27% decrease. However, OSS did see a slight uptick, just by 2% though, of 365 days utilized of out-of-school suspensions. So that has been a small increase there. On the far right there, you see you have your alternative placement by race. A highlight there is that all races have actually decreased their placement in the ALC. And then you've also seen just an overall decrease of utilization of the ALC. So meaning we're actually sending less kids to alternative placement, so by 21%. Here we have a breakout in a pie chart version of students that are electing for our alternative learning center versus home education or other available options. So a highlight here is out of the 257 students that were recommended for alternative placement in the first semester, 77% of those, or 198 students, have opted for our ALCs over a home education or private school adult ed option. So you have the numbers broken down on the bottom there of ALC, home ed, and then other placement, which is just including of if they're moving out of state, adult education and or private school. Here we have that home education broken down further, comparing 23-24 home ed in lieu of ALC data to 24-25 home ed in lieu of ALC semester data, and we have it broken out by race here. So you can just see where some are taking more advantage of the home education option than others. So we've seen just a slight uptick in the use of home education compared to last year. So here are the actual discipline codes that are utilized when students are being recommended for alternative placement. So a highlight here is out of these 25 categories, 14 of them have seen a decrease from this time last year to this year, which is always a positive. Quite notably, things like fighting, you've seen from 74 to 48, drug use, 57 to 49. So we are seeing some things there for positive as well. And this is just a breakdown by school. So you have your 23-24 first semester compared to your 24-25. And these would be in conjunction with the previous slide of the schools that are recommending placement to the ALC or to another alternative placement. Here we have our district risk ratio. So it's important to remember that the state risk ratio threshold is a 1.0. For all subgroups, which is considered what we want to be at. So looking at this, 3 subgroups have either made a gain or a reduction towards this threshold. We have seen an uptick in some, and these are things that we'll be continuing to work on as a district to make sure that we are providing, a good risk ratio threshold across all subgroups.
All right. Oh, did I just turn it off?
You turned it off.
All right. Good afternoon. So we're going to go into the bullying and harassment update. So our goal moving into this year, I know the first time I presented last year, I stated that it was obvious we needed to make sure we were training all stakeholders on what bullying is, because it tends to be a word that gets used, misused, let's say that. And so our goal was really to increase the knowledge for all stakeholders and to empower our school administrators and to minimize mistakes that were happening. So we did a few things. We created all new training videos, and we, for the first time, pushed this out like on our website for parents. And we also took our brand new administrator trainings, and we put them on their SharePoint site so that they could rewatch them. You know, in the past, we did only face-to-face, and so when they left us, they had no way to really go back to that information. And so by creating the videos, they can go back and they can, you know, review the sections that they need to review whenever, you know, are in the middle of an investigation, because depending on their school, some of them don't do very many investigations. And so, you know, when you're not in it all the time, you can forget the process a little bit, and that's when we see mistakes. And so then we also, as we noticed some of the errors that we were seeing, we did some extra little screen recordings to walk them through some of those things. We also streamlined the forms and the letters, and we, again, to minimize the mistakes, if you notice on the list, we numbered them. So we made it where it was like very easy to kind of keep track of where you were in the process. And if they had the same number, we trained them, you only choose one of those, one. So if there's 2 number 3s, you just choose the one that you need. And so we've noticed that that has been very helpful. We also took their, we had a separate checklist and we had a cover to our packets. And so we decided to merge these into one and put them in order and link anything that we could link, and really just make it where they walked right through the steps all, you know, in one place, and then ending it with them giving us the assessor code to ensure that the data was getting to the state correctly. So, you know, just trying to tie up any mistakes that were happening. We also, back to the empowering our schools, we wanted to really ensure that they were able to make these decisions and knew that they were giving the correct outcome. So we took our investigation forms and we gave them we walked them through making that decision, whether it was for bullying or for harassment, and you'll see that. So the harassment we had not focused on, we had missed some of those cases. We tended to say, well, if it didn't meet the definition of bullying, we just made it unsubstantiated and moved on. And so we really needed to make sure that if it didn't meet the definition of bullying, it was being evaluated for harassment. And so that had us really look through how that definition was different than bullying. And this was a tough process, because the definitions have a lot that are the same, but the outcome or what it causes is more substantial, and the impact is greater. And so we really had to train on that, even like the difference in reasonably affecting a student or substantially affecting their education. So, you know, we had to train on the difference in reasonably and substantially. And so we really, you know, helped by just, you know, walking them right through making those decisions. And then we changed the process for how we document and focus. And so in the past, we were running everything through a referral, a discipline referral, whether it was substantiated or unsubstantiated. And they were also asked to submit the referral at the beginning of the investigation and then go back and fix it once they knew the outcome. And what we saw was that a lot of mistakes were happening, and, you know, sometimes they would accidentally delete the whole referral and start over, but you'd still have assessor sitting out there not attached to a referral. And when it is unsubstantiated, it is not supposed to be attached to a student record. And if you run it through the discipline referral, you're attaching it to the student record. So we switched that process. In the end, we need them all to be reported to the state, which is done through the discipline incident, which is the assessor. And so if it is substantiated, they start with the referral that leads them into that incident. And if it is unsubstantiated, they go straight to the incident, which never attaches to the student record. So, our data, I'm really pleased with the data, especially our unsubstantiated bullying numbers, which tells me that hopefully our stakeholders are understanding the actual definition better. And so that, you know, our principals, I'm sure, or well, I should say our deans, because they do most of the investigations, I'm sure that they are appreciating not having quite as many investigations that, you know, because hopefully we're getting to the place where we're submitting things that are actually meeting the definition before it has to be investigated. So that number's down by 30%, which I think is really great. So then for Title IX, we also redid all of our trainings for Title IX. And one thing that we did with this training was that after the administrators took the online training, which had questions throughout it, which was the same way for the bullying and for the code of conduct, we did some Q&A sessions that they could sign up for if they wanted to. And they really, really appreciated that because it gave them a platform to get some questions answered immediately. And so we just did a survey with them, asking them to get feedback on the way we did the training this year, and they wanted some additional Q&A sessions added, and so we're gonna add some this next semester for bullying. Yes?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Q&A sessions go, are those linked somewhere so that somebody can just look and see, hey, these are questions that have been asked in the past? I'm sure that a lot of the administrators might have similar questions.
So they are not, however, like right now, for instance, we're working on a frequently asked questions for bullying. In fact, Lisa just submitted some examples for me to go through and, you know, add any of the thoughts that I had, or things that I had been asked. So, yeah, so we're working on getting I like to be able to have resources at their hand. And so our goal is to have all that stuff on their SharePoint site, you know, for them to access whenever they're looking for it. We also have joined Justin with the monthly discipline trainings because he already had that platform, and we feed into that. And so as I said, can we have just 10 minutes of your training with them so that we can start addressing any of the mistakes that we're seeing, you know, or any of the questions that they have. So, all right, so what we're looking at here is where we were at last year at this time versus this year at this time. You know, when I first started, we had 25 open cases from the year prior. Well, I'm happy to tell you we have 0 open cases from the prior year at this point, and so that's great. And we went into this year with very few open from last year. Part of re-engaging our principals in the process, I think, was helpful because they were very disconnected from the process, and so you know, it's a little bit of that out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. So by re-engaging them in the process, I think that has been helpful. And so we currently have 6 open cases, but we have triaged 97. So we've also gotten really good at helping administrators understand if it meets the definition, because we don't want, it's an intense process. So we do not want to run anything through that process that does not meet the threshold for it. It needs to go through the code of conduct process if it doesn't meet the Title IX definition. And so I think I've already shared with you that we switched who we consult with, and we really, really like our new consulting company. They're very practical. They understand that we're in a K-12 system. So that's been great.
Do we do the triaging? Do you do the triaging, or does that's before it ever gets to this third party?
Yeah, so we only go to the third party if Kathleen, the Title IX coordinator, and myself do not confidently know the answer.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we have a triage form that they can go through themselves. And then we get an email that they've completed it. And so Kathleen always follows up with them and just has a discussion. And a lot of times they also will call Kathleen, when they're not sure. Oh, yeah.
I just want to say, when we get calls in our discipline area about that, if we believe that it might walk that line of possible Title IX, we're making sure we're working collaboratively with Ms. Cassim-Smith, and we also tell them about using that triage form. That way, we're making sure we're addressing their concerns and not having them go down a rabbit hole they don't have to.
Very much appreciated.
Okay. All right. So these are a result of our administrator surveys. Oh, it's okay. It's okay. So we did a school administrator survey right when we came back from winter break, and approximately out of 140 administrators, we had 118 respond to that. Overall, as you can see, the results were fairly positive. When looking at the first one, discipline policies and procedures are clearly defined for administrators. An overwhelming majority of 92% agreed with that. When we look at number two, I am able to understand the disciplinary rules and corrective strategies in my school as written in the Code of Student Conduct. Again, an even overwhelmingly more positive at 97% of participants answered they agreed. The third question we asked them was, monthly training updates are adequate for ensuring I am following the policies and procedures. They're slightly lower, but still very positive at 89%. The ones that disagree, we are obviously trying to field to make sure that we're addressing those appropriately as well. And number four, we kind of asked them, what type of additional trainings would you like to see? So we did get a broad plethora of different answers there. And then we also put an other on there for them to kind of open and respond to any trainings they may want to see. So we are actively looking at that data and making sure we're addressing their concerns. Additionally, we also surveyed our bus drivers during the same time frame immediately after winter break. So out of 235 bus drivers, 102 bus drivers did respond to this. Similar type questions that were more important to a bus driver would be discipline referrals being processed more quickly than they were in the past. So when you look at that, it says 75% agreed, 17% disagreed, with 9% strongly agreeing. So if we just added up agree and strongly agree, that's 84% of bus drivers are feeling like their referrals are being processed faster than they were in the past and in a timely manner. Number two, I know what to do when I have a disciplinary issue on the school bus. Again, that was a great response of 98%. So we really like to see that. And a Code of Student Conduct, again, we asked them about additional trainings they may want to see. So if you kind of see there, it's split between, but they did actually enjoy the positive behavior supports training we did provide, along with a de-escalation training in the beginning of the year. So we'd like to kind of continue with that and provide them with additional trainings they would like as well.
Can I ask a question about that? So I think I left this on. We have a constantly revolving door of new bus drivers, kind of like we have with administrators, but maybe more so. So when a new bus driver comes on, what are we doing to kind of do a stopgap for them if they came in, they missed the fall training? I know you've got some ongoing. Is there something that they can access, or before they hit the road, are they accessing these trainings?
Currently, we're not offering a monthly training for our bus drivers, but we are looking into providing a lot of videos. You know, in the past, we've done a lot of face-to-face, but we're working towards offering more online and videos so they can access. Because remember, every time we do pull them, we have to pay them to even watch those videos. They have to be paid for
No,
that.
and I appreciate that, but I think it would be well worth it just because if we have new bus drivers coming in who haven't received this training, this is going to be part of what helps them stay with us, is if they feel empowered to do what they need to do. So whether it's on part of the onboarding requirements before they hit the road with students, or just some basic, you know, I know the full-on trainings we can only do so many times because it's hard to pull them in. They've got jobs to do. But I even if it's just a library of videos or something, there needs to be something so that we're not putting people out there unprepared to deal with what they're going to face.
And we also do have someone with transportation that we partnered with, one of our staff members that do ongoing trainings, but I want to be specific with the trainings that we're providing as well and do
Right.
more of that collaboration. So,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Well, and every new driver, I mean, some of them may have driven for someone else before. I mean, they won't necessarily need everything, but I appreciate you guys doing that.
Absolutely.
If I could just elaborate on that part of it, I know you and Mr. Pierre, you and I discussed the video training part. And I mean, I'd be in favor of even putting it on, or think it might be a good idea to even put it on YouTube on your own channel and let it, they want to access it, they access it, but you don't have to pay them. It's just if they want the training, it's there for them, you know, at their convenience. Not saying there shouldn't be also paid training time, but this is, you know, just having it there for refreshers even would be great. And not doing formalized video, but even just training the training sessions, just so a rough video, they can watch the interaction between the bus drivers and their teachers, other instructors.
This is singing to my ears because I've wanted that. We're gradually getting to more of that PD where we're videotaping. So yes, that is on our agenda.
So here are our results from our partners at BFT. They did a survey in the same time frame that we did. So here are their results. Approximately 438 teachers responded out of union members. 3,100? There's 3,100 technically union members currently.
Thank you, I was gonna ask that question.
Yep.
so that's
I did not have that written down, but yes.
He gave me the approximate.
So when we look there, policies and procedures clearly defined for teachers. We do see there's a split of the members that did respond at a 50%. Second question, I am able to understand the disciplinary rules and corrective strategies in my school as written in the Code of Student Conduct. Again, there is a majority. However, we would love to see that increase to a overwhelming majority instead of just approximately just below 60%. And the final one here is addressing the follow-up of administrators. An administrator follows up with me to discuss referrals and corrective strategies. We see that there is some room for growth there. We see that there is an all-time is roughly just under 22%, with some time being around 50%, and then 28% not following up at all. So we would definitely like to see some improvement and growth in that area.
And I did share this data with the chief of schools, since the principal supervisor, so they can really work with the principals in looking at this data as well. I shared this with him on Friday when we received it, so.
They had a couple more questions than we did on their survey, so I'm just going to go over those real quick. I can easily get a hold of an administrator during a crisis situation. So again, we do see a majority of positive there with just under 60%. However, we would love to see that and continue to grow. My administrator supports me with student discipline issues. Again, we are just over that 69%, which is a good number, but there is room for growth there as well. Finally, they did ask them what additional trainings they would need in order to support them in the classroom, and they have a plethora of different answers. So if you could see that pie chart, there's a whole bunch of little ones in there. However, there's a good amount of stuff with de-escalation, policies and procedures is something we can definitely address with them, classroom management, et cetera. So next steps we're looking to do, and this is kind of inclusive of both areas, is continue to provide support and problem solving to schools. This is something that my team does on a daily basis. We do our own version of triage where we have schools that'll call us, email us, and be seeking advice. So we are trying to train them to make sure that they're utilizing our documents we have, our existing documents, our manual and student code of conduct. But my team is there to make sure that we're able to answer a phone call or an email in order to make sure they're getting their problems addressed accordingly. Continuing offering that professional development for school administrators. Again, this is something we do on a monthly basis. We are always trying to provide them the most up-to-date information in order for them to effectively do their jobs. adding scenarios to the monthly assistant principal trainings. This was something that came up as an ask, because a lot of times, even though every situation is different, sometimes if you're brand new to it, you might not be well versed and have a lot of experience. So we want to add some scenario-based examples in order to give them a little bit of more understanding of sometimes the more common occurrences they may be seeing. Continuing to collaborate with our partners in BFT and transportation. We find this to be very positive, and we would love to continue that and make sure that we're both growing positively for BPS. Ensuring schools are effectively tracking and monitoring their data. We do a tracking and monitoring data here. However, we want to help and partner with schools to make sure that they are also owning their data and know their data as well when it comes to things discipline related as well. Offer trainings on bullying, harassment, investigation process and forms during the second semester via Teams. That is something I believe Ms. Caston Smith had already alluded to. More trainings that would be occurring in the second semester. And finally, again, holding optional Q&A sessions and office hours for bullying and harassment investigations.
Question about trainings that you guys offer. Do you offer trainings for what in a secondary school would be a dean's clerk, elementary, whichever secretary or whatever is, or assistant is in charge of following with paperwork? Because I know ultimately it's the dean or the assistant principal, the principal who is responsible for what's on the paperwork, but I know sometimes things get tossed back down from the district to the school because somebody didn't fill out something correctly or whatever. But do we do any trainings for them to kind of help catch those things?
No, we haven't, but we could start doing that.
If it's necessary. I mean, nobody's come to me and said, I want to have this training, but I thought it might be helpful.
I know we've done it with some of our paperwork that comes in for, for enrollment, but we really haven't, for re-enrollment, but we really haven't offered any dean's clerks training or anything like that.
I know during our 10-month principal trainings, our dean trainings, there are some schools that do invite their clerks and they do attend. However, it's not consistent across the board.
Right.
Because some schools obviously utilize them more than others, while some might not have that advantage of having one. So.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I just thought there's so much, if something didn't get signed and, there was something, I know Dr. Fontan, I saw a note on something recently, I think it was an expulsion packet, hey, we missed something. And it's such a, maybe not quite as clear step by step as the bullying harassment Title IX process, but there's a 1, 2, 3, and sometimes if that causes a delay, the whole process, just could be more frustrating. So if it's necessary or if it would be helpful, I think that would be good.
I think to reduce the errors with the paperwork, we can add that to our trainings and offer that virtually like we've done in the past for other trainings, like we offer for our behavior techs who we actually provide that training monthly for them. Maybe we can do something for our dean's clerks as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
So, and just to add, so my team is working on a handbook for our clerks right now because we noticed that they're not really owned by any one particular group. And so they're asked by a lot of different, offices to do different things. And so we're working with, we surveyed them and we asked them who do you reach out to, for your role. And so we made sure that we got all of those people around the table and we're trying to just, I would say they probably work the most with ET. And so they already have documents that they've made, but we want to try to put it all in one place. And so that we're working on trying to just get them a little bit of support.
Oh, that's a great resource. Thank you for doing that.
And I want to say thank you to the board for, I really do think that behavior techs in our elementary schools having that foundation really has contributed to some of this data, the decreases in that. I'm constantly out to schools. We were just out to a school on Friday, and the principal's like, please don't take my behavior tech. Please don't take my ENC support specialist. Or please, it's been a life changer. And changing just as last year when I would go to their schools and I knew that they needed something, especially at the elementary level, not saying secondary doesn't need it, but elementary, they were saying, we want to be a principal. We can't be a principal. And Friday I was at a school And oh my God, that discipline, the principal says that their behaviors have decreased by 54%. And they said, thank you, I can be a principal because I have a full-time behavior tech, full-time ESC support specialist. So I'm saying those resources that we're providing in the schools have been monumental to some of, I think, some of telling the story today of some of the decreases. So I want to really advocate for, providing more of those positions for next year.
Can you, I know, because everybody's starting to jump in, can you just advance that one more so that, because it says questions on the next one, I
Sorry,
think? All right,
sorry.
so that we're in the proper spot. All right, so Ms. Campbell, I didn't want to pass up. Have you completed all your questions for Ms.
Yes,
Dampier?
I'm good.
All right, Mr. Thomas, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I think it's awesome. I think from what the board did, with the superintendent's implementation, to your team, to the principal, the deans, I think the discipline policy overall is working. I think the training that you guys have done is awesome. And the fact that you have followed up your training with surveys to get feedback to improve is something that a lot of people miss, I think. And I think it'll pay huge dividends even moving forward for these next couple of years. So kudos to you guys on that. I think it's awesome. I just had a question about.
Microphone, please.
And it wasn't listed that I saw. I was just curious if you had an answer for this. But one of the slides was listed, am I on?
There you are.
Must be child resistant.
I could hear you.
It said of the 198 students, you said, one of the slides said 198 students opted for ALC. I don't know, it was during the discipline portion of it. And I was just curious, is there, do you happen to know off the cuff, out of those 198 students that opted for the ALC, how many of those had no further discipline action taken to the rest of the year?
We don't, but that's something that we can look at. We can try to disaggregate that and get you an answer.
Okay. And other than that, I think you guys were very comprehensive, and I think you are doing an awesome job.
Ms. Wright.
All right, I'm up next. Okay. Thank you for all this information. Honestly, we need to continually keep on looking at this. One of the things that I look at, I think that's very important, is really the recommendations for alternative placement by school. That chart, I think it's on page 12 on your slide here. It's pretty easy to see where the hot pockets are, right, of the majority of the children that are going into ALCs. And I think that warrants probably the district taking a look at what can we do to help those certain schools in a different way, as the board has talked at the last workshop about looking at something different than the ALC, possibly looking at like maybe an ISS model, which not every school has that. But if there's a way that the district can focus supports there on trying to really hone in on those schools and figure out, there's a few here that are a little more concerning than others. I think that really needs some specific focus. But overall, we're trending the right way. So we knew when we originally came in and we started to say, hey, we're going to look at discipline. Discipline really is to try to modify the behavior, right? We want to make sure the students are well behaved in the classroom. Everyone is learning. It's a productive environment. Our teachers feel safe and are happy with their jobs. And discipline was one of those messages we were hearing loud and clear, like this is a problem. These kids are running the classroom. So we're trending in the right direction for the most part, getting some of these things under control. That being said, we have kids, so we understand kids are going to push the lines. They're going to push the boundaries. We're going to always have to correct them and make sure that we get them back on track. But again, overall goal is just to maintain a peaceful classroom that's productive so these kids can learn, because unfortunately, we see the other side of it, the expulsion side of it. And so when you read some of those packets and you see that steps are having to be taken to remove students from classrooms, and you start to read all the story there, you're going, oh my gosh, we still have work to do. So thank you. And if there's a way that we can focus on those schools that have the majority of these ALC placements and see if there's a way to bring some support into those schools, I think that would be tremendous. There's one that's really a hot spot, I think more so than any of the other ones. If there's a way we can support that school in any way, I think we should look at trying to do that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dampier. I was really excited when I saw these numbers. We were talking about them the other day. And I just wanted to say thank you to you and your staff. You guys are amazing. I leaned over to Ms. Wright and I said, there's things that you do as a school board member that you get kind of remembered for, right? Mm-hmm. And if you ever would have said that our group that came in there in 22 would have known that discipline would be one of the things that we're remembered for, that would be not something I saw coming. And it kind of hit us. We're ready to go. And because of your support and the work that you've done, it is something that we can shine on this district, and people can feel safe about them sending their children to our schools. I did want to point out a couple of things that I saw that are really good. On your page 411, it's just with all the alternative placement by discipline code. Weapon possession down 100%. Possession of potentially dangerous objection major down 100%. I think part of that may be the fact that we moved in with our metal detectors. We always do have some that might make their way in or out, but the fact that you have to have the single point access, and now I think that that's gotten under control, something for everybody to kind of take a look at. And then I was going to say something, because it's the drug sales and distribution is down 80% and the drug possession is down 16%. Is that, you feel, in part because of the system that we put in place for taking children away from going to the alternative learning center and actually working with them in to where we don't have repeat numbers and we don't have all that stuff? Have you guys seen any of that or no?
Yes, I believe that would be definitely when you're looking at this, Mr. Susan, this is students that opted for alternative placement, so this wouldn't be encompassed of those drug diversions. So the drug diversion, every student that selects drug diversion is one less that is being placed in an alternative setting. So
Yep.
that is a positive.
No, it's awesome. I did talk to the bus drivers right before, it was right before we took off on break. And what you'll find is the 17% that were there, I know a couple of them that had said like that they don't feel that their referral processes were up to speed on that thing. What you'll find is that they will tell you that they have principals that actually do it very well and some that don't. So those bus drivers that I was a part of and spoke to, both at the Viera compound, the Manatee compound, and over in O'Galley, had mentioned to me that it's specific to school and that we may be able to talk to them about, okay, if you don't feel strongly about it, where is it that you don't feel strongly about it? Because they'll tell you, and it's not like it's 1 out of 10. There's all of them. You know what I mean? So it's pretty inclusive on that.
Can I chime in on something? Just a simple suggestion. I'm gonna brag on my North End bus compound. So Cleveland up in the North End, what he does at the beginning of the school year, and I think it's imperative as really building that relationship, is he takes his bus drivers to each one of the schools and meets with the principal and the deans, brings donuts, and really just establishes that relationship, because it's all about relationships. And I think that he has said that has paid dividends that are tremendous as far as his processes of referrals, being done in a timely manner. So just maybe a suggestion, a challenge.
Yeah.
Hey, take them over there. Let's meet with the admin team, build that relationship, and see if that helps
I'd
to
like
some
to go if there's
degree.
donuts there.
Yeah, and he always brings good donuts. See, there you go.
That is something we can share, especially when we meet with our bus supervisors. We meet with them monthly along with Dr. Miller, and we problem solve. And we really, if they have issues, we try to, intervene ahead of time, because we want to be, proactive instead of reactive. And that's a great idea.
He always invites me to come along too, so I'm like, I'll be there. So it's lots of fun.
I just didn't want you guys, I think that the number is great to look at, but I wanted you to understand that sometimes it's not 100% of those 17%. The other thing is that one of the things that the bus drivers had mentioned is the follow-up to them, right? So we know that the process is they come home, they write the referral, it goes to their kind of area supervisor who formulates it and sends it in. That area supervisor, and sometimes may not be receiving it from the principal back and then back to the bus driver. I didn't know if, along with some of the things that we normally do, if there was like a checkbox list, like a process and flow, like, okay, you know what I mean, was processed, was sent to the bus driver, check, you know what I mean? Because that kind of area kind of breaks down a little bit sometimes, and that's an area that I thought we could improve.
That's an area I'll get feedback on, because we did add that from this summer. I met with the bus drivers, and that was one of the requests that, they find out, when it was processed. And so we thought we addressed that. It was a part of our training. So we will look and make sure that it is working with that.
And if you did address it, if you can put a timestamp on it when it did, so that you can see where those are happening, because I think that they would be indicative of schools. And then, I got all these. This is good. I talked about that. And then, Ms. Dampier, have you had a chance, you spoke there at the end about the very high importance of each one of the behavioral techs and those individuals. Have you had a chance to kind of go through that with each board member and explain to them the process? Because there were some concerns from our board about taking from instructional assistants and all that other stuff. And I don't know if you ever had that opportunity to talk to them. I didn't know if you wanted that now or if you want to meet with them individually and talk to them.
Well, we were very thankful this past year again because we were able to add behavior techs, and I was afraid that we were not going to be able to hire the behavior techs because we had so many IAs. But what it did was is open an opportunity for those IAs who were having to ride the bus or were only working 6 hours. The behavior tech pays a little bit more, and as far as the hourly rate, but it also gives them 8 hours. So it did, we did have some IAs move to that position, but it didn't hurt us as far as the IAs, us not being able to hire for either or. So it was a win-win situation because we had more people wanting to stay with Brevard Public Schools. Those that did not want to ride the bus all the time, that kind of thing, and really work in the school. So it really just opened the door where we were able to keep some people who probably would have gone back to, the Target or some other area. But we still need to compete, be able to compete for those particular, employees that really, they have a skill set that we're really training on every month to make sure that they have the skill to work with our most severe kids. And so we do want to expand that because we have heard and we've seen that this really has helped in our elementary schools. So we want to expand it for next year, and we're also looking for an increase in that particular area as far as salary.
Are you able to see the reduction in discipline based upon having behavioral techs in schools and places that don't have them? Can you see that yet?
Yes, because in elementary, we were able to, I can tell you when I was on the campus on Friday, it was like night and day. That same campus I was on last year, and I just commended the principal. She told me that they have reduced behaviors by 54%. I can tell you there's structure in the schools. There's learning going on in the classroom. She's not like she was, it was like night and day. And I had to commend her, and I actually commended, I told Mr., he's not in here, I told Mr. Raymer that I went to the school, and he even said he's seen a difference. And I've been to several schools that were asking for help last year, begging, pleading. I actually was a part of trying to, work with several schools, and we're not seeing it. When I go to the schools, the principals are not saying that they can't be an administrator. What they're saying is, thank you for this support, that we're actually able to do our job at the elementary level. And that was why it was imperative that we provided that support for them. And some of our schools are still sharing. We have a 0.5. We have like a couple of our schools that's sharing. I think about 23 of our schools are sharing a 0.5 part-time. And we're hoping to expand some of those if we get funding for full-time, because some of them are needed. And so I say ask the principals, but they've all said to me, please do not take those 2 positions away from us.
When you talk about sharing, are you talking about the ESC support specialist or the behavior techs?
Both.
Okay, we have sharing of the behavior techs?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we only had enough funding that within my budget last year to do full-time, and then to make sure everybody had some access.
Right.
And I've already spoken to Dr. Rendell about possibly expanding that as well as ESC support specialists, because I've heard that as well.
Right.
And we know that there's a need, we just need additional funding to make that happen.
Right. Those
And
are just at our our smallest schools, right? Or our like choice schools and things like that.
Not necessarily.
No.
We went as far as we could with the,
Right, the funding you had.
the funding that we had. And so I've already spoken to Dr. Rendell about possibly expanding, that there is a need to expand several of those to full-time.
Right.
I'm
Gotcha.
sorry, Ms. Campbell.
No, that was it.
Your work in hiring has been phenomenal with the vacancies that you had when you took over. Even the teachers union and others have given you such great praise over the percentage. And I know you have some vacancies that people are sharing, but you've done a great job in that regard. And I wanted to give you and your staff the opportunity for a second, because you've been doing great. I know you don't ever want me to give
It's
it
the
to you.
staff.
but
We
you guys
really are.
amazing.
They work. We work together, and we want what's best for our kids. And we know that when I hear stories like what I heard on Friday, it warmed my heart. This is why I do what I do, to see it, actually see it, because I would not have believed it. I'm just telling you. and to see the principal and the ESC support specialist walk with us to classrooms as well, learning what's going on in the classroom. We were in the halls. There was stuff all in the halls last year would probably been taken down. And so it was just so nice to see and hear the principal show us what is happening in their schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dampierre. Thank you for everybody. Anybody else have any questions for Ms. Dampierre? We're good.
I have some stuff.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Rendell. I was getting, Dr. Rendell, I was
Get over here, don't do
getting ready
anything.
to say, Dr. Rendell, that's what it's on here on the notes. I can do it.
No, I appreciate some of the points that the board members have made and some of the slides they've highlighted. I'd actually like to highlight a few others. So, Jason, if you can go to slide 5. So slide 5, I think, is one of the best slides to share. So whoever can get us
We're gonna
back
get
up
on that
there.
right now.
All right.
It's going to be much easier going this way.
So this is the ticket slide. So remember last year when we were trying to address misbehavior and we said to correct the misbehavior, we have to write a lot of tickets. It's like you got a certain road where there's a lot, drivers are speeding or driving recklessly, and so the police pay attention to that road. They set up patrols. They write a lot of tickets until driver behavior changes. So last year we were writing a lot of tickets, referrals. And at this point this year, the number of referrals are down almost 2,000. I mean, that's amazing. And then the number of students receiving referrals is down almost 1,000. So, I mean, or a little over 1,000. So, you know, we're still enforcing the rules, so to speak, but we're actually writing fewer tickets and fewer students are receiving tickets, so to speak, writing fewer referrals. So that's really, really good news. It means that some of the changes that we've made over the last year and a half or so are taking effect. And then the other slide, number 8, if you can just advance to 8. So when we finished the year last year, one of the things we talked about was fewer days of missed instruction. Now, at the first part of the year last year, our numbers were higher. We were suspending kids more out of school and assigning in-school suspension at a higher rate than the previous year. Then it kind of leveled off, and we ended the year with fewer days of out-of-school suspension and fewer days of in-school suspension. Well, we're already ahead of the curve overall with those this year. As you can see, ISS has decreased almost 1,300 days. Now, the OSS has increased by 365, that's only 2%. So combined, it's 932 fewer days of missed instruction at this point. And last year, again, this was the higher point. So if our pattern continues through the end of the year, we should actually be able to beat, but you know, last year's totals in both those areas. So fewer days of missed instruction should mean, you know, better academic performance. And, you know, that's what we want the kids in the classroom. I really feel like we've been able to do this with consistent enforcement of the policy. And part of that's education. You know, Mrs. Dampierre talked at the beginning about educating everybody about what the expectations are, not just the staff that's administering the discipline, but also the students. Did a good job of trying to, you know, explain what the desired behaviors were, what the consequences were. And that leads me to slide number 17. So we can jump down to 17. So 17, and you can go ahead and get your red highlight on there, is not, this isn't just paperwork. This is real cases. So 30% fewer cases of unsubstantiated bullying. We might think, well, there's a 30% reduction in unsubstantiated bullying. There must be like a 70% increase in substantiated bullying. And no, there's actually a decrease. So again, it's education, not just for the people handling these cases, but also to the students. You know, we're doing a better job. And then, you know, Mrs. Cashin-Smith talked about, well, if it wasn't substantiated or it wasn't deemed bullying at all in the past, maybe we didn't even consider harassment. So I kind of left the door open, well, then maybe there's going to be an increase in harassment cases because you're not classifying all these as bullying. And you look and, nope, decrease in unsubstantiated harassment and substantiated. I mean, unsubstantiated increased by 2, but still combined a decrease. So again, really, really good work by the staff at the schools that are handling these cases. You know, not just, you know, up here at the district office or even the administrators at the schools, but even the teachers in the classroom. And then the last couple slides, We talked about 20, 21. Those are the survey results. You don't have to go to them. But the fact, like Mr. Thomas pointed out, that we're not only making these changes, but we're asking for feedback. You know, we're not just looking at the results, at the data, we're asking for feedback from the people involved. And, you know, the results from the administrators seemed pretty strong. The results from the bus drivers seemed pretty strong. The results from the BFT survey looks like we still got some work to do. You know, so, but we have that feedback and we're going to, you know, act on it. So kudos to the Student Services Department, but really kudos to all the staff at all the schools. You know, because this is, you know, the phrase that we use a lot is discipline is everybody's responsibility, just like safety is everybody's responsibility. So it's not just the Student Services Department, and kudos to them. You're right, Mr. Stusen, yeah, definitely. But all the people at the buildings that are making this happen, you know, that's why these numbers are so good right now. So we just hope it continues for the rest of the semester, this, you know, rest of the year.
One thing too, just because I think it's important to highlight the fact that you mentioned it, that the teacher participation in the survey was pretty low. So even though these numbers don't look maybe as favorable as we would like to see, it only represents about, what, 15% of the teachers that they have in the union. So ideally, if we could have more participation, that might look a little different. If we got that number up to over 75% of the teachers responded, we might see a little bit different there. And if we don't see different, that's okay. That just lets us know we need to work on a few things, right?
Correct, yep.
So that's all. Thank you. Thank you for everything. We appreciate you guys. You guys have been doing amazing work.
So, Mr. Susan, we have one more topic to cover, but I'd love to take a break if we could.
Yeah, I was just gonna, literally, I felt Miss Campbell breathing down my neck here. I
Hey,
agree
before
with
we
you
take the
100%. She went and grabbed it, and I was like,
did.
okay, I know what
I
that cue
did
is.
want
I've been there.
I did want to jump in just really quick before we take our break. I don't know if you guys saw an email just 30 minutes before the meeting started, but the delegation meeting has been canceled for next week because of the weather and the potential special session. But also, I got an email from Tom Sarah from the consortium, and we are the only district that hasn't voted on the consortium platform. So I don't think it's too late because it's been topics we've discussed in the public for us to take that vote tonight. We can talk about it this afternoon, but we need to give a yay or nay, or if there's anything we want to pull off of the consortium platform while we're thinking about this afternoon. And then let's vote on
Yeah,
it
we were going to
officially
talk
tonight.
about it in 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. So, but tonight we can
Vote for it
vote.
later in workshop.
We can't vote in a workshop.
Can't vote, but
But we
give
need
direction.
to vote in it.
Yes.
Right.
All right,
Well,
we'll
we
be
need a
back in 5
response.
minutes.
All right.
3 to,
Last on the agenda is the legislative platform. Does any board member would any board member wish to lead the conversation? I can walk through it. I think the first, you want to do it? Okay, sorry, Dr.
I'll get
Rendell.
started, yeah. So each of you have a packet in front of you. It's information I had given you before. We're a part of different groups, and so some of our different groups have put together legislative platforms. For example, we're part of FSBA. There's a legislative platform from FSBA we've looked at. I'm a member of the State Superintendent's Association. There's a platform for that. We're also a member of another group of school boards, the Greater Consortium of Florida School Boards. They have a legislative platform. Mrs. Campbell had done some work earlier and had put together what she thought were the bullet points that we all kind of agreed on as our own, things that we wanted to carry forward. So you have all that packet. Also, you have a sample draft letter from me to the Brevard delegation. As Mrs. Campbell pointed out before we took a break, we were going to be presenting to the Brevard delegation later this month. And so what I've seen as somewhat effective in the past is that different groups send all of their information to those delegate members ahead of time. Say, they send it out send it to them a week or so ahead of time, and then just follow up at that open public meeting, hitting some of the high points. So I drafted a letter based on what we had kind of talked about would be our points, and put that together. So I thought we could have a discussion today about, do we want to adopt anything different as ours? Do we want to change anything, reorder it, or that kind of thing? Also, as Ms. Campbell mentioned, we are being asked by the consortium whether we agree with all of the things on their platform or not. And if there's anything on their platform that we don't want them to pursue, that we need to let them know. So, that's kind of two different discussions. One, are we good with the bulleted points that Mrs. Campbell put together, and then I translated into a letter, and that's going to be our ask to the local delegation. And then B, are there other things from the other platforms that we want to bring in?
So that's awesome. Do you want to start with the Greater Florida Consortium and just say, does anybody wish to veto anything on here? If you guys take a look at this, it's kind of we have the authority. This is kind of like everybody that's in the consortium has an idea, they throw it on here, and then if we want to eliminate some of it, we're good. I'll take any recommendations.
I had one small ask on the first page. So the allow school districts flexibility regarding school start times and dates. Can we add and dates?
Yep.
So we can't add. So the way the consortium's platform works is we can't add, we can only take away. So they built this, the adding time was when they had their meeting in the fall, which
Right.
we were invited to.
Yes.
But they build it, and we can anything that we as a board say we can't get behind that, they will take it out of the platform altogether, but they won't add.
They won't add.
They won't
Okay.
add.
So with that in mind, then I mean, to me, I don't support this. I don't know. We've already changed everything, and maybe that's being selfish from a Brevard standpoint. But as far as complying with the state mandate on school start times, I'm guessing that's what they're trying to get at right here. They don't like that, correct?
Right. So this doesn't apply to Brevard because our middle school and high school times are already
Right.
after the times. But I will tell you, this is causing significant consternation in many counties across the state because of their busing, their three-tiered busing systems, and because of students like their practice times and being able to have after-school jobs and all this kind of stuff. So they're having community outcry in their communities. And so what the stance, I'll just tell you, that FSBA took on that was at least allow districts to put out a community survey. And if they could show that their community really doesn't want that, they'll leave it. But I will tell you, there's already been bills filed bipartisan way. I don't remember if in both houses to actually either repeal this or pull it back quite. So I think this is, I mean, I wouldn't want to take it off just because we don't do it.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of counties that are really having a hard time. We're going to have a significant hard time, especially with transportation, if this continues.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
I had one item and I'm gonna have to find it, but there is and this is the one that I talked to.
On the front page.
Yeah, thank you. Which paragraph is it, Dr.
We're on the
Rendell?
consortium still, that
Yeah,
one?
we're all in the
The
consortium.
third one after priority issues.
Yes, sorry, governance. So the third paragraph, require all schools that receive taxpayer dollars to have the same financial and academic accountability measures. That sounds great, but what it says is that every private school will have to have the same financial and academic accountability measures as our public schools. And while there's some people would say yes and amen, I'm not sure that, when it comes to choice, I'm not sure that is a good idea. I mean, private schools have their own ways that they, like, are we going to require private schools to take the FAST test? Because when it says academic accountability, that's the way we have academic accountability, is through our school grades and through our FAST testing and all the other things. I'm not of the opinion that our private schools, the state government should come and tell a private school what to do when it comes to that. Even if they're receiving funding, that's the parent's choice to do that funding. And I don't think that if I follow that rabbit trail, ultimately I think that's what it means, is that we would require our private schools to have the same kind of testing and academic standards as our public schools. And that's not a very conservative position.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that stance, honestly.
What if we vetoed just and academic, and you put in require all schools that receive taxpayer dollars to have the same financial accountability measures?
Well, if you do the financial, while I want the accountability for these scholarships, I absolutely do. When you talk about financial accountability, then whatever requirements we have as far as audits and things like that, then we're also saying we want the same that way too.
If they're going to take taxpayer dollars, I have no problem using financial accountability measures on them. That's only if they do. So if private schools don't want to.
It's the same word, the same. Because like, again, if I chase that all the way down the rabbit trail, it's basically turning private schools into public schools.
If they receive public dollars,
Right.
you should be able to be financially. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not allowing you to go.
It's the same word. I mean, if you could take out the same, I would be in support of it. To require all schools that receive taxpayer dollars to have financial and accountability, and academic accounting measures. That I could probably get behind that, but I don't think it needs to be exact.
Well, it does very much seem as though they're going to target private schools with this, and what will end up ultimately happening is you'll have your private schools not taking the scholarships, and the whole point of them having the freedom of choice is to be able to move their child where they feel they're getting the best education.
Right.
So I kind of tend to agree that that's a slippery slope. Does anybody know, or can anybody share with me why some of these are underlined and why some of them are not? Does anybody know that?
I think
Are they
that-
new, or they?
No, it's if you look at the difference, I was looking at these, some of them are underlined, it may be because they're like amendments to existing legislation, and others are kind of new ones.
I know,
Maybe
that
that's
threw
what
me
it
for
is.
a loop, and I'm like, or am I supposed to
I'm not
focus on
sure.
these more
I'm
so
not
than
sure.
others?
I
They
think
didn't send a
just
key.
copy and pasted stuff and put it
Yeah,
on
usually it's when you make a change, it's underlined or something like that. We asked and we didn't get a good answer.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
If you don't feel comfortable, you guys, about moving forward on this one, I did want to just say my piece and then be done with it. You're right about that, Ms. Wright, that they will start not wanting
They
to
won't
take
take
the
the vouchers,
scholarships,
yeah.
which is a negative. The only problem that I run into is that a lot of these charter and private financial institutions they are started and they are run by like a organization that not only is the real estate company, is the company that sells all the food, like they're just set up as a profiteering situation. And I think that that's fine. I'm not saying that that's a negative at all, but it just needs to be financially known. And I don't think that they're able to do that under the certain financial requirements that they have. I'm not saying that it's illegal. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I just think that the people that go there should know, the board that sits there should know that the person that is also their realtor is also their person that they buy their management from and their everything else. You know what I mean? That's all. And that would help there, but I hear where your concerns are, so I'm willing to. just
Mr.
say-
Chair?
Yeah, sorry.
So I of the opinion that if they're going to receive taxpayer money, that they should be accountable to the taxpayer. If they're not, it's their choice if they don't want to take the funds, and that's fine, remain private. But as soon as you take taxpayer money, you should be accountable to the taxpayers.
And I think what we should do, since this one's got a little bit of dance to it, maybe what we do, Mr. Thomas, is rework this one and bring it back next year strongly and just make it as part of recommendations, so we're not being negative on the piece that goes to the scholarship. We addressed some of the issues with her, but the only reason I say this is there's a couple of charter schools in our district that were doing this, that are no longer doing it, but they were doing this, and it was really upsetting to me that they were being kind of sly behind it, right? And so I would like to move, if that's okay with you, to do something like that to where we're not kind of throwing it out there. We can veto this one and then.
Well, and we're not talking about adding this to our agenda, but we're just saying, do we,
Right.
you know, do we want to,
Right.
and I honestly don't know the answer to the question of, I know we can't add anything, but can we remove just 2 words? Or can we say all or nothing? I mean, there's,
Yeah, their direction at, the last time we met with them was they just, if any board has any issue with any of these, we'll pull it off.
okay.
So if we have an issue with that,
I feel,
require all schools receive taxpayer dollars, period, after that, they're going to just take it off.
I feel strongly about it. I want to be able to work it better, if that's okay with you guys. Because I do feel strongly about that.
And I'm all for accountability. I'm not opposing accountability, but I think, again, in the nature of what the voucher program really was created for was to make sure that all children had equal access to potentially private schools or different education option rather than the one that they're zoned for right there in their neighborhood. And I'm afraid if we say that, then it might end up ultimately saying, okay, well, then we're just not going to take it, and it's going to hurt kids in the long run. And again, I like the idea of have the best product. If you have the best product, then the customer comes to you, and so the competition keeps us all better, right? Not to knock private schools or charter schools or any of that, but we want to be the best and continue to be the best. And if we are, then there's enough for everyone, so to speak.
So I think we pull that one. Since if you want to run through Ms. Campbell, and then I'll go to Mr. Thomas if there's any that he wants to pull. If you want to,
That was the only item I had.
Okay.
Did I leave this on the consortium's agenda?
okay,
The only other one I had was adding, and I didn't realize you couldn't add to it. So the as far as start times and dates, because I felt like that provided some flexibility if we were going to look at the modified calendar, that would give us that ability to do so if we could get that across.
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
I know we can't add, if I was going to add one, it would be to the consortium's initiative to increase pay for mid-level teachers. I think it should be for all experienced teachers, because I think that could create compression for our most experienced teachers.
Where was that one at?
It's on page 2, about, I don't know, like a fourth of the way up, and it's bold letters, mid-career teachers and support. That's the one you're talking
Correct.
about, right?
I wouldn't want to take it away, because I wouldn't want to take away the chance to get some additional funding, but I would think it should be for everybody, all experienced teachers.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. I just was reading that. Okay. Is there something you want to try to pull out of there, or do you want to?
No, I was going to actually bring that back up when we do our own recommendations for our district.
Okay. All right. So we'll keep it. Anything else, Mr. Thomas? It's
No,
a
sir.
good point. Mrs. Wright, do you have anything else?
Nope. I love the renewal of the voter approved millage for a period of up to 8 years. I think that would be a really good beneficial thing for school districts, but
Which one?
that's under capital outlay.
What was that? Say that
Where?
again.
The permit school districts to renew voter approved millage for a period of up to 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be shocked if they did that, but I understand
All right.
why.
Everybody else is good?
So as we're getting back to Mr. Sarah, do we want to ask if we can remove just those words the same, or if we can, or if not, just strike the whole item?
You're talking
I would
about
just say strike that whole sentence.
Right.
the taxpayer dollars piece? Yeah. I have a call with them this afternoon if you guys want me to just make the phone call and tell them we're good to go.
Yep.
I have a standing call with them for something. Are we good with that, Ms. Campbell?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Dr. Rendell, you okay if I move to the Florida School Board Association platform real quick?
Yeah.
And so you guys, inside of the notes, you have the Florida School Board Association platform. There's 5 items. I think we went at length with this. Ms. Campbell, thank you so much for giving us an update previously. Is there anybody that wishes to have any communication on this or conversation on this?
I didn't have any issues with theirs.
Okay.
I was trying to see if what you had said about the dates, because when we did our submissions to this, I think we added that, and I can't remember. I don't think it made it on here.
Oh, I've seen it.
No, but I'll say this. I mean, we technically we have the ability. I mean, like we talk about the pilot program that we're a part of, but if a school district wants to start a year-round school, we don't have to be a part of the program. We already have the ability to do it, just like Royal Palm Charter has run year-round schools, and Charlotte had the year-round schools. So we have the ability to do that without a special. I mean, if we're not doing a year-round model, we can't start before August 10th, right? That's the law. But if we're doing a year-round model, I don't believe we have to have special permission. Is that correct?
I thought we did because the state statute's pretty clear on not being able to start before the August 10th date. So
Well, but we have these schools across the state that have already done it.
I know, and I wondered that question. Yeah, I don't know. We need to look into that a little bit more since that's probably coming up on the horizon.
Yeah, there are different provisions. You can start earlier if you're a high-performing district. For example, you can start earlier. The charter probably wrote that into their model when they applied. So when that was approved by us and then approved by the state, that was there. Those schools over in Charlotte were doing it before that statute was enacted. So
They were,
maybe
so
they
they're
were grandfathered, maybe.
Okay.
But I can check and see, can we just do it without saying we're going to be a pilot?
Right. Because that came up with us when we were initiating the pilot project. Is do we really have to be a part of the project
Yeah.
to do it, the pilot, in case there's
Right.
limitations?
There's one of only 5.
Right.
Right.
And did they even get the 5?
I think
A couple
only-
of the school districts punted it a
yeah,
year out. 'cause
I
they
actually only
weren't-
think 2 of us did it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we're all good with the Florida School Board Association legislative platform? No
Well, I don't
issues?
think that was on there for our approval. It was just if we had something we wanted to pull off to put on our own.
Correct.
Because that one's done.
Right,
It's
this
been
one we
voted
don't
on
get to
and
weigh
just
in on.
Going
Yeah.
through it. All right, and then the Florida Superintendents Association, FADS. Is there anything that you guys wish to pull from here to put onto ours? Or tell him that we don't like any of this?
Yeah. Did you have any favorites on here, Dr. Renzel?
No, I think, again, I've signed off in support of the platform. So when they talk to the legislators, they'll say, the Brevard superintendent signed off on this. So, I mean, most of the statements in the FADS platform are general statements. Provide more funding,
Right.
provide more flexibility, reduce regulations. So they can take many forms. That way they don't get pigeonholed. So it's like, these are the types of things we want done.
Yep. All right, and then, so if nobody else has anything on the FADS, do you have anything, sir?
No, sir.
Okay, then we can move to our platform. And this might be an opportunity, Mr. Thomas, if you have something that you want to try to add at the last minute, we can.
Okay.
But this is if anybody has anything, I wanted to just say I'm so excited about the certified pre-K because I've been driving people crazy up there about this for long enough. And I appreciate this being put together and everybody's work behind it. But Mr. Thomas, you got something to say?
Yes. First of all, thanks to Mrs. Kim for putting this together. That's very comprehensive and appreciated. I have just noticed, and I'm sure I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know, but I think teacher pay is a huge thing, and we have limited ability, a lot more limits than I thought we did as far as being able to do things with it moving forward. So I think that, first of all, it should always be a priority of ours to try to get more money from the state for that. And I think right now, if my statistics are accurate, we are 47th out of 50 states in average teacher salary, but we're in the top 10 for the highest starting salary. So that says we can get them in, we pay them decent, but once they're here, they're not rewarded for staying here. And I can tell you, I was here last week to do a new teacher welcome, and half the room were new teachers that had never taught before. And the room was packed with more than 100 teachers. So to me, that says we're losing. We're not just us, but I think it's a problem across the board that experienced teachers are leaving the profession. And I think if we're going to be competitive with other states, we need to be we don't not just need to be worried about being competitive with Osceola or Orange or Indian River. We need to be, as a state, worried about how we're competitive with the rest of the country. And so I think we need to lobby as a collective group. I know this is just talking about just our district, but I'm saying for next year, I think we need to have a concerted effort, but among all these associations, all these organizations, to have that be something that's on their list every year, because I didn't see it even listed other than the one I mentioned for the Greater Florida Consortium. It's not even on anybody else's radar. And there's no way we're going to be able to be competitive unless we get that increased. So anyways, that being said, I'd like to make it one of our priorities that we move to increase funding for experienced teachers, mid and however that should be worded, but our most experienced teachers from the, mid-career on. Because obviously teacher salaries at the beginning are fine, and there's been adjustments, and that's all good, but we need to get additional funding for our experienced teachers.
So I have a question as to how we want to go about this. So there's a couple ways that have been gone back and forth. So the way that we got the teacher minimum salary increase, right, was the state mandate, get up to 47.5, and then here's this funding and keep going. But there were all these strings that made it really complicated in those years. And then we had this compression that happened, which I think you're trying to solve. But when the state continues to increase that funding, which the governor has proposed and the legislature has passed, it's in a special category, and it's fewer rules over the last few years, but it's all a lot of times tied to rules, rather than doing an increase to the base student allocation, which is increased funding for school districts, like just broadly, which gives us the flexibility to actually hammer it out with our own bargaining units, and so we can come up with the best solutions that are right for the teachers in Brevard. And as that flexibility has increased, we have been able to take care. We've had some initiatives with negotiations with BFT to be able to fix some of those in our own county, those mid-level teachers with different initiatives. But the reason why I would kind of lean towards doing like just a general, we want to see this percentage increase, because that doesn't just give us funding for teacher salary initiatives, but also for our other critical support staff. And if we get it specifically in the TSIA, which is the teacher salary increase allocation, then it goes back to this, all the rules that are tied to that. So we can do one way or the other, but it would probably be good for us to decide, how do we want to ask for that increase in funding? Do we want to say, hey, I notice that the consortium has asked for at least a 5% increase in the base student allocation. I can't remember if FSBA has at least a 5% increase in the state in the base student allocation.
Oh, my apologies, I didn't see that part.
Yeah, no, that wasn't on ours. That was on the FSBA. It was on page 2. When we added the hurricane stuff because of the storms this year, it bumped it. We have a 2-page platform instead of 1-page platform. But so we want to do one way or the other. My recommendation would be to make it as part of the base student allocation, because that gives us the most flexibility to address salaries and pay for a broad variety of employees where we have needs.
I wouldn't oppose to that. I defer to you guys because you are more experienced in that area than I am. I just know the overall objective. I think we need to have more ability to increase pay for our experienced teachers and our staff.
So can I just weigh in on just this conversation a little bit on one train of thought versus the other? The TSIA, when we increase that says we are giving this money to our teachers, right? So there's some security from the legislation standpoint of this is actually going to go into our teachers' hands. When we increase the base student allocation, that gives the district, as you said, the flexibility. And I think one of the things, and this is no disrespect to anybody here or anybody in any school district, the increase in administration, the increase in some of the things that the legislation, I think, feels frustrated with on, hey, we're giving you guys funding, we're giving you plenty of money, but you guys are spending it on other things. So I think they would be more inclined to say yes to the other. That's just my personal opinion. And it also sends a message that this is where we are putting these dollars. We are not saying we want more money and then we're going to do something else with it. We're saying, yes, we would like more funding and we want it to go here because this is what we're doing with it.
Yeah, well, I've heard that argument in a legislator's office before. I think that particular legislator, I think, sometimes misses the point that it's not just salaries that go up. Everything goes up, just like our gas and electric bills and groceries have gone up. So our gas and electric bills and groceries go up too. So I hear you. I mean, we can do both ends. Hey, increase the base student allocation, and we support an increase to the TSIA, so that with maximum flexibility. That's the
Yes.
key to that. The maximum flexibility to the increase in TSIA, because otherwise those first rules especially were super restrictive, and that's what caused the terrible compression. For
Well,
us.
and then and maybe even say something to that effect to address wage compression, because then that we can clearly show, hey, we've given XYZ dollars to our teachers that have been here for this many years versus that many years. And you know, if we ever were to be audited on it, we could show, hey, we've done that. So I'm curious, what legislator said that to you? Because that's, I've not heard that from anybody, but that's just my thoughts of it. So,
I'll tell you later.
okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
This is a sidebar to this discussion. I'm just curious. Do we currently pay for experienced teachers to come from out of state? Do we give them years of credit as far, maybe not years in retirement, but do we give them years of?
We do not.
Experience.
We do not, right?
We do not, except for with the millage. So
Yeah,
if
they
you
get the
come in
millage, right.
because of of us having to address the terrible compression, if you're coming in as a brand new teacher with I think up to 20 years of experience, you're getting that. Am I nod your head, Ryan? If I'm correct, you're starting at our base pay, which is $50,400. However, we do with the millage recognize teaching experience. We wrote that into the MOU before the public passed the millage, that all of your teaching experience from charter, private, out of state, whatever, as long as you document it, you can come in and you will get, if you've been teaching for 20 years, you will get the biggest millage supplement to go with to try to address that issue.
Does it address it enough?
If you're, I don't know what the amount is for this year, but it's like $7,000. The millage supplement for our highest teachers is like $7,000.
Is that a local, is that our district alone, or are we?
Yeah.
So the millage is our district alone, but also not bringing in your years of experience is our district alone. That's a negotiation with the BFT.
Yep.
So that would have to change.
And I'm preaching to the choir, but to me, we're trying to bring in experienced teachers. We're the fastest growing state in the nation, and we cannot keep up with, we can't just keep on bringing inexperienced teachers in. We need a combination of both.
Right.
And being able to recruit some of the best and brightest from other states would be huge, especially if we can get the pay up. So to me, that should be a priority as well, so.
It has to be negotiated. We can negotiate that.
I think part of the conversation that's always been a stickler of mine is that we have to, if you come in, you don't get those years of experience until you hit your 20. And the millage does offset it, but it is something. I think we can do a better job when we come together during the next budgetary system. I wanted to tell you a quick story. You know, during COVID, there was a bunch of upset Canadian teachers that wanted to come here. So I've somehow found 400 teachers in Canada that were part of this group that had just said that they would come to United States because they had shut down all the schools. People had gotten upset with the way it was. And the one thing that they got held back on was they couldn't figure out how to come here and make enough. And these were masters in their craft and everything else, and it was incredible. I remember that. Some of them were still willing to come, but the majority of them held back because of that. So you're 100% right when you make that argument, Mr. Thomas. I agree with you on the base student allocation, but I wanted to say this. What Ms. Wright says resonates up in Tallahassee, because I've talked to a lot of legislators that are ex-legislators, and they say, we give all this money. We know we give this money to the school districts, but it never gets to the hands of the teachers, right? And in some cases, not like Brevard, that does happen, unfortunately. So we need to educate them about how we do it and how we show things so that they can see the differences. So like there's opportunity to say, well, we heard about this audit or this thing or this waste over here, and that's what they point out.
Yep.
That's not us, and that's why we should be stronger at it. So if you wanted to add something along that lines, if you want to meet with Dr. Rendell, I would mention to the certified pre-K thing is a really good explanation of what even I presented 4 years ago inside the legislature, but
It was copied and pasted. I mean, John gave me credit, Mr. Thomas gave me credit, but this is a conversation that we all had in August. I just recorded it and then I added certified because that makes
you
a
might be
difference.
able to just say, cut half that off and add something about the base student allocation funding directly.
Well, we might make it 2-page and make it more of like a flyer, so
Yeah.
that way.
Either way.
And if we can put it on our radar just for discussion when it comes time to make recommendations next year for these consortiums, that would be, I'd love to be able to get them on board. I just don't think that anything's going to happen unless it's an overwhelming mandate from all the school districts.
I asked when I was chair to have all the consortium heads meet and hone out so that when the legislators get the Greater Florida Consortium and all that, just three tops, like three top issues that each one of them have. Like, I understand the Greater Florida Consortium, if you look at the way it is, it's all the coastal counties. It's amazing for us to be a part of that. But the guys up in the Panhandle aren't going to be the same. So what my argument was is we're all feeling the same thing. Let's get three tops. And I couldn't get there. So
Well, and
you're 100% right
Having
where
a
you're thinking, John.
5-page
Right.
is probably not helpful either.
Good
but
luck for Mr. Sarah.
That's what I'm
to go
saying. Like
ahead
when FSBA drafts theirs, they're like, we got to get it down to one page. And we had it down to one page, and then there were the hurricanes, and they're like, well, we can't have a hurricane year and not ask for the hurricane flexibility, even though it didn't
Smaller
affect all of us.
font,
Yeah.
wider, and then no logos.
No one appreciates
I
That's
got
all
this one down pretty small and pretty.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think
was.
you
So
did good.
clarifying,
might not need
so if
all
we
of
can
that.
clarify for Dr. Rendell, are we asking, saying we, as a board, we're in support of an increase to the base student allocation, but also to an increase in TSIA with maximum flexibility for.
Yeah, so I wrote down 2 bullet points. One,
Okay.
to cut and paste, copy whatever the 5% BSA ask that is in several of the platforms.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one was to increase the TSIA and allow flexibility to use the funds to address wage compression. So I'll work on
Perfect.
Okay.
making that look smarter. But I want to put them both in there separately that way. Because, most of the other ones have the increase in 5% in the BSA, which I agree is kind of a bigger lift than when you say targeted money towards teacher salaries, or, that might get through easier.
And when we're talking in Tallahassee, or we might be mentioning anything about the pre-K, the education committees are well aware of each one of them. They've actually looked at it. They're the ones that asked for the OPAGA report because they know that they have 90% of it, but they're afraid there are other things that they're going to miss. So just so you know, staff's behind this also. So that's all. Dr. Rendell, do you have anything else?
I'm good. I've got direction.
Any other board members need anything else?
Oh, I do. And I apologize, board, for not catching this earlier, but as we're getting ready for the annual Children's Hunger Project Love a Kid Luncheon, and it is on the day of our next meeting, and I didn't catch it when we moved our meetings, our workshops to start at 1.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's down the street, and it starts at noon, but like it ends at 1, and I have big responsibilities that day. So I was wondering if on the 11th we could start our workshop just a little bit later, just to give me, because obviously I'm going to invite all of you, and I want you to be there with your pocketbooks along with you, please. But just want to make sure that I have time to that we all have time to get from there to here and have a little flexibility. I don't know what you have on the agenda for the next workshop, but do you think we could move it back and not hurt our
I
time
mean,
frame?
we can definitely do it. And
Okay.
we just, then the board will have to be conscious of the time as we go through. But,
Yeah.
like I mentioned earlier, we're going to have, food in between. So we can push all the way to like 4:30. So
Yeah.
Okay.
So can we start like 1:30 or 2, either one?
I think if you said 2:00, you're safer.
That's
I mean,
good.
I wouldn't want to say 1:30 and have us all get in car accidents trying to get here.
From
Wait,
down
where
the
is
street,
it?
I hope not. It's
It's
at-
right around the
It's at
corner.
St. John's.
Right. It's
Oh.
at the church right around the corner, right?
Yeah.
I know. Okay.
Yeah. It's not
Are
very
you,
far.
Miss Campbell, are you going to sing this year again?
I am not, but we are going to have some really special entertainment from a couple of our elementary schools. So you'll be getting your invitations.
Well, that's a bummer. I advocate for you singing anytime because you have a beautiful voice.
What about Dr. Rendell and I?
No,
No,
I haven't heard either of you actually. So
So maybe 1:30, because we can't start without us. So if it's 1:30, if we show up at 1:35, it's,
Okay, so 1:30, we're good?
do you think that's enough? Or-
Yeah, I mean, I will tell them I can't stay and help tear down. So we've got lots of volunteers, so I think we're good. It will be over by 1.
well, in good nature of just respecting, because obviously our chair is not here right now. He's had another obligation he had to be at for the board, but to run it by him, make sure he's okay with that. I don't think he has any. I don't know if he has anything that he's planning for that day, or if you guys have
Well,
discussed that. But
I know what he should be doing from 11:30 to 1. But yes. No,
1:30 p.m. on the 11th.
Okay.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, nobody else? This meeting's adjourned.